good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good middle of the night, good 5 p.m. happy hour with the boys, good wherever and whenever you are listening, because you've tuned in to the Pylon Dons Fantasy Football Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, yes, this is 2 weeks in a row where Ben and I are both in dire need of a haircut. I am making a promise on air that by the time the next episode is recorded, me and Ben will be pulling up with significantly crispier fades and crispier cuts. Ben, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm hanging in. I'm gonna get a fade by the one and only Drew Blends. My roommate, he cuts my hair. Potential life hack: live with someone who cuts hair. You never have to go to the barber, and you'll actually like speaking with them. I hope. But speaking of things we like, but first off, I learned my lesson from last week. AJ, how are you doing?
You did. More like you learned my lesson and reiterated it back to me. I'm doing solid, Another day in the office is another day in the office. Nothing much to report about there. I hit legs in an insane fashion today. And then so the thing about my gym is it's on my way home, but to walk home from the 6 train, it's like a good 15-minute walk most of the time. And then I have the 4-story walk up. So like fresh off the leg day, right onto the subway, 15-minute walk. And I got to the walk up and it was not treating me right. I had to just stand there with my hands on my hips, like, all right, we're going to get through this. It's only 2 more flights, flights. But that's just how leg day can treat you sometimes. But the real heavy lifting we're going to be doing in this episode, giving myself a pat on the back for that transition.
Wait, you didn't say anything about heavy. Heavy for you doesn't mean heavy.
Fair enough.
Yeah, proceed.
The lifting, whether it be heavy or not, that we're going to be going through this episode is we're going to be bringing up some of the higher caliber free agents that are really projected to leave their teams during the free agency period. For those of you who don't know, starting March 14th is the legal tampering period. And then on March 16th is when the free agency frenzy really truly kicks in a high gear. People start signing their contracts, and we have that crazy week where the entire fantasy football landscape is definitely set to change. Where people are supposed to be drafted is going to be set to change, as well as some of these teams fill their offensive needs as well as their defensive needs. But for the sake of this fantasy football podcast, we're going to be talking about the skill position players.
And speaking of skill, I would like to just talk about the skill that our sponsor, Verse Gaming, had today when they shouted us out on their Instagram page, because they're a wonderful peer-to-peer betting platform that you should definitely check out. We partner with them on a lot of content and YouTube stuff. And while we're just plugging people, while we're just, just staying shameless, you guys see our Twitter. I'm trying to point to AJ's in the box. We're not together. But there's AJ's Twitter handle. He's at AJ the Pylon Don. And there's my Twitter handle at Ben the Pylon. I'm struggling right now if you're with us on YouTube. I'll get better at that. But you can also follow us at the Pylon Dons on Instagram and at Pylon Dons on Twitter. So follow all of us and Verse Gaming.
Yeah,
now back to your
give Verse Gaming a look.
Content.
Verse Gaming puts out some not only great content across Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. They're super active in all those spaces. But the app is fantastic, and soon, hopefully, they're going to be launching the official app in the App Store. And I would love to send some bets over to our very, very loyal listeners.
I would bet it shuts down the App Store faster than Kimoji did way back in 2014 now.
Wow, I can't believe
Kimoji just shut down the App Store. Hey, we made $1 million a minute. We did. Okay, we should probably start talking about football.
Yeah. Before the viewers start to dwindle away. Ben, do you want to take it away or should I?
Can I go first? Because I'm just going to get this episode off on the right foot with a scalding hot take that probably won't happen. I'm opening up with admitting that this is an underdog. I'm walking up to the mic. I'm seeing plus 500, and I'm saying, you know what? Screw it, we ball. I think that Chase Edmonds is leaving the Arizona Cardinals, and I think he is going to sign a contract with a team that would have serious fantasy football implications. Not necessarily for Chase Edmonds, but more so the surrounding pieces. And I think that the Kansas City Chiefs, who actually have some cap space, and aside from bringing back Tyrann Mathieu, don't have major players to bring back, I think they're going to go out and sign Chase Edmonds. And I have a little reason as to why. Well, first off, before my little reason, the big reason is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been terrible, and they don't trust it. That's the first one. Next, Clyde is going to be the only guy in that backfield next season. Darrell Williams, I don't believe, is under contract as well, and Jerick McKinnon is an impending free agent. Now this brings us to Edmonds. Edmonds has been strong, but not spectacular. He was last year's PPR running back, 34 in 12 games, ran for just under 600 yards on 115 attempts, 43 receptions for 311 yards and 0 touchdowns. Guy got you 2 touchdowns, didn't get you 1,000 yards. He's 25 years old, which is kind of middle age for running backs. So he's not this souped up Le'Veon Bell, throw him the bag type guy. He's closer to just the guy than the guy. He's a good player. But why I think they go after Edmonds is because I kind of view Edmonds as a better, younger version of Jerick McKinnon. They have very similar height weight profiles, very similar speed scores. They're both receiving backs, and I think the skill set is really similar. So I think Edmonds would be a strong fit in their offense. I know that this Kansas City team has a lot of holes to fill and a lot of things to do. So I understand that running back may not be their top priority, but they clearly don't want to put the ball in Clyde's hands. And I think that given the actual running back competition on the market, like we're going to get into Melvin Gordon, Quarterl Patterson, James Conner, Rashad Penny, Sony Michel, Leonard Fournette. There's guys out there. And Chase Edmonds is not going to be the most expensive of them. So I actually think that this could be a very unique and interesting pairing.
Yeah, I do worry that they do bring back Darrell Williams. He was good as change of pace alongside Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but it's not foregone on the Chiefs organization in recent years to have a crowded backfield, and it's definitely not foregone to say, we'll worry about defense some other time. Let's get this offense as souped up as possible. So then bringing in a guy like Chase Edmonds opens them up to investing more on defense through the NFL draft, especially with their cap situation coming up in the future years, as well as maybe even take a receiver in the draft as well, which some people are mocking them to do at this time. So I don't think Chase Edmonds is that crazy. I don't think Chase Edmonds is that crazy, or more so, I don't think a running back is that crazy. It might just be a guy even cheaper than Chase Edmonds, but I like the thought process.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, this would be fun, but these are like things that I kind of view like our predictions for this episode to be the intersectionality of what we think will happen and what we hope would happen. Like, it needs to be within the realm of possibility, but how would I like this to look?
That's a fair way to do it. And I think that segues pretty well into my Melvin Gordon departing from the Denver Broncos take that I will start to get into. I think that the Miami Dolphins are a serious candidate to bring in a guy like Melvin Gordon. This is a guy who's worked well with other running backs in the past. We know Miami is not new to running a committee. Heck, I mean, Malcolm Brown was heavily in the mix before he got hurt last year. And then Myles Gaskin was the workhorse. He was inconsistent, but had some great games. But Melvin Gordon has finished as an RB1 alongside another guy playing at a high level in Javonte Williams. In Week 14, both of them finished as running back ones. Melvin Gordon is on the older side, so he probably won't demand as much money. But after the 2-year, $16 million deal he played phenomenally through at the ages of 27 and 28, he's going to warrant a little bit of change, which is why this prediction is a little bit hotter. But, I mean, we've now seen Melvin Gordon put up 8 or more rushing touchdowns in 6 consecutive seasons. That's more than anybody in the entire NFL. So I think he's going to be worth every penny to whoever spends money on him. And whether the Broncos choose to match these offers is really going to be the key deciding factor. They obviously do need to address the quarterback position. That seems to be their top priority. But the defense is super in line. They could see some improvements on the defensive line without Von Miller anymore. And on the offensive line, they could improve there as well. They're pretty stacked weapon-wise, so I wouldn't be terribly surprised that if they do get a quarterback, They don't try to bring back Melvin Gordon, who may demand $5.5 million a year. And I don't think Miami's in a position to invest high draft capital in one of the top running backs in this class when they can bring in a guy like Gordon, ride him out alongside Myles Gaskin, and then address running back a little bit further down the road, maybe once they've shored up some of their secondary concerns and their weapons as well, which are kind of lackluster with pretty much Will Fuller is a free agent, Mike Gesicki is a free agent, and Devontae Parker was good in stretches but not great. So you kind of need some other people alongside Jalen Waddle if some of those guys do end up leaving the team. So overall, I think Melvin Gordon is a great fit. He was the RB22 with over 200 attempts, 918 yards, 8 touchdowns, and he was involved in the receiving game as well with 28 receptions for 213 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think he would be phenomenal for Miami.
I think that's a great call, and I think that any running back who starts in Miami is going to do very well from a fantasy perspective. Any guy that's like a Melvin Gordon, or should a Breece Hall, Spiller, or Walker come into the draft, should be a top 24 guy in this this new offense that comes from 49ers coaching staff of Lore. So I think that's going to be a really good start. I think the real question here is going to be do they fall in love with a guy at the combine? That's what we're going to see. And we'll have answers to those in the coming weeks. We're going to be getting more and more into the rookie class. But should they not have a guy that they want to draft, I think Melvin Gordon, if Denver lets him get away, would make a ton of sense there. So for this next one, I'm going to openly admit that I don't think this is the greatest fantasy pairing ever. Like I thought this, and I thought it was pretty gross. And I was like, why on earth would I want that to happen? Why on earth could I think this could happen? But then I thought about a lot of things. I thought about things that bad franchises do, such as overpay running backs coming off strong statistical seasons despite they're not ready. That's something a bad franchise does. Bad franchises try and make really quick turnaround, especially when they have tons of money. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles teams from the middle 2000s with Chip Kelly, like 2010s, where they're just throwing tons and tons of money and hoping that something sticks. Well, I'm pretty concerned with the Jacksonville Jaguars doing the same thing next year. Travis Etienne is a great running back prospect, but he's coming off the Linfresnik injury, and he's more of a pass-catching back. Originally, Urban Meyer, the guy who drafted him, wanted to even use him in pretty much what is now considered to be the Deebo Samuel role. This guy is every bit as much a pass catcher as much as he is a running back. James Robinson, my pride and joy, OG, has torn his Achilles. And as much as I love James Robinson, he's no Cam Akers. No one is expecting James Robinson to be ready on day one, and expecting him to be even the same player afterwards is questionable. I kind of think he'll come back somewhere in between Cam Akers and Marlon Mack. Cam Akers, who looks the same. Marlon Mack is happy to be there. I think James Robinson will hopefully be in the league for a while, but I don't think unfortunately, he may not be the same player. And I don't think Dare Ogunbowale or Raquel Armstead will really be the secondary guys, which leads me to the Jacksonville Jaguars and Doug Marrone making the flashy signing of last year's running back 5. Please hold on to your lunch and don't throw up, but James Conner. This would not be good. But I outlined why I think this happens already. They're thin at running back. They have money. They've shown a penchant for making poor decisions. James Conner was so successful last year because he got all of the goal line work in Arizona. He was the running back 5 on the year in 15 games. He didn't even rush for 1,000 yards. Think about that. The running back 5 in all of fantasy football didn't rush for 1,000 yards. Well, what happened? He got 18 touchdowns. So I understand this prediction may feel a little funky, but I think they're going to throw the absolute bag at him. Any team that offers James Conner at age 26 more than $6 million a year is a poorly ran franchise. And I can't think of a franchise more poorly ran than Jacksonville. So this to me almost feels like a match made in heaven if I really spell it out for you. They absolutely could go and pick a different gross veteran running back and maybe even a more expensive one, but they're going to add to this room. And this is how I could see this playing out. And I would not be in on James Conner from a fantasy perspective if this happened.
I love this call. I wouldn't be in on him necessarily, but you do have to remember that this regime has no loyalty to Travis Etienne. I get he was a first-round pick. They don't owe Travis Etienne a dime. So if James Conner is the better in-between the tackles runner with Etienne coming off the injury, I wouldn't necessarily think this is the worst signing in the world. And I do think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are really a big candidate to try and go drop a load of money in free agency on
they have
some
a
of these
Super Bowl
skill
winning head
positions.
coach. That's what they want to do. They want to do exactly what the Cincinnati Bengals did this year.
Yeah, and they think they can do it because of what Trevor Lawrence is as a prospect. What he's been as an NFL quarterback is an entirely different question, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. But they want to give him as many tools to succeed as possible, and a guy like James Conner definitely helps you do that. So I don't actually hate this signing. If they're really going to go all in, this is probably their best bet, I would say.
He would not be a running back 5 in Jacksonville.
I totally agree with you right there. I'm talking strictly from a football perspective. I think that this would probably be in terms of the money they would give him versus, say, bringing back Leonard Fournette or even going to pay one of these other free agent running backs that we've discussed previously. This would probably be the one that would be the best bang for your buck if you're really trying to give Trevor Lawrence something to lean on this year.
Absolutely. And as one running back leaves Arizona, you have a running back joining Arizona. So could you talk to me a little bit about Quarterl Patterson?
Yeah, you want to talk about the RB9 on just 153 rushing attempts? This is another guy who's like a super hybrid running back, and like you said, some of these running backs are being used in a Deebo Samuel-esque way, and I think Quarterl Patterson was kind of your bootleg dollar store version of Deebo Samuel this year in terms of the value that people invested in the draft or in waivers in about 99% of leagues versus what he returned on investment. We just watched him cash his best season at 30 years old. That's not really normal for running backs to do. In fact, it's ridiculously unprecedented. Even the greats like Adrian Peterson and Chris Johnson started to fall off once they hit 30. Obviously, Quarterl Patterson, who was drafted as a receiver, doesn't have the wear and tear or the pedigree of those guys. But Arizona is one of those teams that's widely predicted to go ahead and draft a running back. But what they've got going on in the front seven is not necessarily going to stay and definitely won't also stay in the secondary. You've got Hopkins approaching 30 years old. You've got Christian Kirk, who's a free agent as well. And you've got James Conner and Chase Edmonds hitting the market. This offense is going to look very, very, very different. And I think what they're going to do is bring in a guy like Patterson, because I think they liked what they saw out of that Edmonds-Conner 1-2 punch. I think even if they go get a guy like Patterson, you're not going to have to pay him that much money. He got paid, what, 1 year, $3 million by Atlanta?
Sounds about right, yeah.
It might be another 1 year, 3.5 with some incentives from Arizona, despite how well he played. So Arizona could definitely do that and still take a guy like Kenneth Walker and recreate that 1-2 punch, but with a more veteran option at the receiving position that can probably provide a little bit more in the pass blocking game as well. And then you've got even more of a home run hitter and more of a touchdown threat than a guy like James Conner might have been. So I really do think that Arizona could bring in Quarterl Patterson. I think it is the perfect fit, and I think it would be good for him for fantasy, to be honest.
So 3 things. First off, I really like the take. Makes a lot of sense. And even pre-show, when we were discussing like potential other landing spots, like veteran teams with creative offenses, like you mentioned here, maybe potentially the Niners, the Rams, all those teams I think make sense. And I like that you settled on Arizona, given how different their offense is going to look. Off topic, but also related. I don't know why, but I'm just so convinced that Kenneth Walker is going to be an Arizona Cardinal for no reason. It just kind of feels right. Which is great analysis. So I'm really happy that I just dropped all those facts for all of y'all. And additionally, these poor Rondale Moore owners, if they sign Quarterl Patterson to do this.
It's not coming. I'm pretty out on the Rondale Moore train. I was not really tooting the horn too heavily when he was a rookie. I bought in a little bit closer to the season. I loved him when he started popping off at the start of the regular season. I just think this Cardinals team is going to constantly be bringing in alpha guys. They're going to be running the ball more than people think. They ran it a lot last year.
They did run it a lot.
If we're looking at Chase Edmonds and James Conner combined for well over 350 rushing attempts, if I remember correctly, and that was with Chase Edmonds just playing 12 games. They're going to run the football. Kyler's going to run the football. And I really think that Quarterl Patterson is just a seamless fit alongside a guy like Kyler Murray. I would love this for Arizona as a football team, and I think it would actually be good for him in fantasy.
I think it would definitely be interesting in fantasy. And excuse me as I check this one stat, because we always like to keep it correct here on the Pylon Dons. To segue into my next running back, this running back actually outcarried RB5 James Conner and played more games than him. But Sony Michel was not the running back 5. He was the running back 32. And it's funny because I've been a Sony Michel, I've had an interesting relationship with Sony Michel over the years. Obviously, I'm a Patriots fan. I was all aboard the Sony Michel train when he was winning a Super Bowl. However, I was very quick to jump ship when after a couple of those injuries, he didn't look like the same guy. I thought he was cooked. I even thought he was a cut candidate a year early, which was obviously not true, but kind of held being true when they shipped him off to LA last year. So that was interesting. But Sony Michel's going to be a free agent as well. Cam Akers looks to be back. They still have Darrell Henderson under contract. And this Rams team has a whole lot of players to pay. And I don't think that Sony Michel is going to be one of them because Cam Akers is back. That's as simple as it is. They traded for him after Cam Akers got injured. This is thank you for your service, Sony Michel. Here's your Super Bowl ring. Crazy that you have 3 of these things now. Keep it pushing. So I think Sony Michel is actually going to find a job in the NFL. Shout out to Josh Larkey, who has just talked about over the years how much people love Sony Michel in the NFL. Teams are just willing to give him carries. It's crazy. And I think he's going to continue to eat carries. And I think next year he's going to be eating carries in Houston. Nick Cassera was a former Patriots executive, so there's that tie as well. Houston does not have any strong backs under contract, and they're a little too early in their rebuild to draft a guy. So I think that those ties and an opportunity for Michel to make some decent money and get an opportunity to play and showcase his skills just makes a lot of sense to me.
My only qualm with this is brought it up. Sony Michel's got 3 rings. Maybe he wants to just go to a winning team because that's all he knows. Newsflash, Houston's not really a winning team. But at the same time...
Really? Wait, Houston? Wait, you're not placing any Houston's futures? Wait, what?
What are we talking, 2027 futures? We could talk about that.
No, bro. Houston up. I don't. Wait, what's their slogan? They got one. I love how the Jags are like Duval, and it's like they're garbage.
Houston is just give it your best effort, you guys, because that's pretty much all they can tell them on Sunday. Sorry, that was a mean jab from a Jets fan. It's very rare I get the opportunity to punch down.
Jets fan, you gotta get your jabs in where you can.
Exactly.
But you're all the way down here. If you have someone even below the camera, you just be like, bah, bah, bah. Keep them down.
Yeah, I threw a haymaker right there. But I do love the call. I think Houston is gonna do what they did similarly last year: bring in vets, bring in receiving guys, make it a whole cluster fudge of interesting opportunities for the running backs, and Sony Michel definitely fits the mold for a guy that a team like Houston would bring in to muddle that up even further and end up being like the RB29 or something like that. Have those Mark Engram games that Mark Engram had last year.
Field lives on. It lives on.
It does. So that wraps it up for the running backs. We discussed 5 running backs. Now we're going to discuss 5 receivers. And the first one I want to bring up is Allen Robinson.
Yuck.
This is not the Allen Robinson we discussed coming into the 2021 season. This is the wide receiver 81 of 2021, Allen Robinson, who played in 12 games.
Brian Edwards outproduced Allen Robinson over the course of an entire season. Imagine if I made that take last offseason.
That would have been, that would have gone in the Hall of Fame, more so for Allen Robinson's downfall than anything else.
Yeah,
but
no. I'll let you rock.
Allen Robinson with the wide receiver 81 performance in 12 games, 66 targets for 38 receptions, 410 yards, and 1 lone touchdown. This Bears offense was bad. It was not bad enough to where that performance was even remotely excusable. This is going to present a really interesting buy low situation. And Indianapolis has always bought low. They went and got Xavier Rhodes. They went and they're used to doing this. They pay guys or they trade for guys like DeForest Buckner who they know are on the outs or that they can be had for a fraction of what they're potentially going to be worth. And this Indy receiver room, T.Y. Hilton is gone. There's no veterans. They just threw a second-year tender on Ashton Doolin for God knows why.
Bro, maybe they believe.
And I think Allen Robinson is really a great compliment to Michael Pittman. He's got better routes. He's got better hands. He plays closer to the line of scrimmage. He can move around off of the outside into the slot a little bit more. That's the type of versatility that Pittman most definitely does not provide and that none of these receivers really provide. And he'll probably be had for a pretty decent price. So I think Carson Wentz is going to be the starter, whether they like it and whether we like it or not.
I hope. Imagine Nick Foles comes back and takes this man's job again.
Hey, and if Allen Robinson went to Indianapolis and that happened, it's A-Rob to the stratosphere for that. But
we can't be saying the wide receiver 81 is going to the stratosphere because a guy who's played like 4 decent career games comes in.
All right, maybe he's going to like your 5th floor walk up, but it's somewhere. It is up.
It is up. The
it is definitely up. And I think Allen Robinson is trending upward. And I think this is the type of receiver that Carson Wentz really tends to like. He was big on Alshon Jeffrey. He was big on other possession receivers during the Eagles' tenure that he had, besides that last season where he fell apart. And I think a veteran like Robinson across from Michael Pittman would be great for this team, especially if they can get him at a bargain, which I think they will.
I like the call. That makes a lot of sense. And I think this could actually be a really good thing for a guy like Michael Pittman as well. I think that it can just take some number 1 corners off him now and again and like allow Pittman to continue to grow. One other landing spot I want to toss out there. You mentioned reclamation. Excuse my language. Reclamation. Nailed it. Reclamation projects is the New England Patriots. They also really like to buy players of yesteryear for a fraction of the cost. So something to look out for as well. This is one receiver coming in who I'm going to highlight. It's going to be super quick because this is boring. And I don't think there's any way that Christian Kirk is allowed to leave the desert. I don't think this can happen because as much as the Cardinals brass are like beefing with Kyler Murray right now, I'm sure everyone listening to this has heard about a couple of disagreements. We're not going to get into all that. But they want to keep Kyler Murray happy. And DeAndre Hopkins is old. Rondale Moore is short. AJ Green is old. And for some reason, Kyler Murray loves Christian Kirk more than anyone else on this planet. Like every 4th down looks to Christian Kirk. Every 3rd down to Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk is 25 years old, coming off his best season. He was the wide receiver 26 last year. One more victory lap for me. 17 games, only 100 targets, mind you. He was a wide receiver 26. Just under 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. They can't afford to let him go, and they can't even replace his kind of contributions with a rookie in this year's draft because of the rapport he has with Kyler Murray and of how lackluster their receiving corps is behind Christian Kirk. So, like, if they didn't re-sign Kirk and just brought in Chris Olave, I don't think you can trot out Hopkins, Olave, Moore, shrug your shoulders and be like, oh, that'll do. I don't think that'll do at all, especially when they lose James Conner and Chase Edmonds. They need the continuity. This is one of Kyler's favorite targets. He's staying home.
You want to hear my hot take, or are we going to keep it moving?
Let me hear the hot take.
I think Christian Kirk is going to be a Buffalo Bill.
That would be sick.
I think he'll be a Buffalo Bill. I really do. I think he fits the mold of that Beasley Sanders, Gabe Davis even type, where he pairs so well next to an alpha.
He does pair next to an alpha.
And he's so reliable. He actually does have a relationship with Josh Allen, which I don't think a lot of people know. So, hey,
true.
We might be throwing this one up on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the TikTok if I call this right here on
I just made a mark on the timestamp.
But if Christian Kirk is a Buffalo Bill, just remember you heard it here first.
But if he's an Arizona Cardinal, just remember that I told you he was going to stay.
That's probably what will happen. But keeping it moving, we're going to talk about Mike Williams.
Love it. Love it. I love this take. I didn't even check this take on the sheet, to be totally honest with you. I love it. You keep talking. I'm going to shut up. This is great.
I get why so many people project the Chargers to keep Mike Williams. He was huge for them in that Raiders game in the Justin Herbert almost comeback. He was huge for them during the first half of the season. He broke out in a contract year. He looks and pairs super well with Keenan Allen. He's clearly a cut above some of the other guys on the depth chart like Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton, to name a couple. But he's going to get the bag. Somebody's going to fold. Somebody's going to give him 4 years, $80 million. And it's going to be an organization like Jacksonville that we discussed. They want to bring a turnaround. They want to help Trevor Lawrence as much as humanly possible. They could sign Mike
Williams and James Conner. They could do both of these things. I would
totally
not
could
be
do
phased.
that. Totally could do that. Would not be phased even a little bit. I mean, Mike Williams is also a Clemson Tiger, similar to Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence clearly needs a big framed target. I love Dan Arnold as much as you do, but that's not the guy that Trevor Lawrence needs to really reach his potential and truly
I just want to see Dan Arnold with Travis Kelce type volume. I just want to see what it would look like. You know, like that's just.
You got to boot up Madden for that one because I don't think it's coming.
That's what I'm doing after this, bro. I'm going on, hopping in franchise mode, selling everybody, and we're running everything through Dan Arnold. The way Jim Madden intended.
But I really do think after this horrid rookie year that Lawrence put up, that a receiver in his age prime, he's 27, he'll be entering his age 28 season, Mike Williams, they're going to be willing to pay him, and they're going to be willing to feed him quite a bit. He was the wide receiver 12 with almost 130 targets, 9 touchdowns. I mean, the thing about Mike Williams is he's no stranger to high touchdown volume. He actually, in 2018 or 2019, had 10 touchdowns on just 43 receptions. So he's no stranger to the end zone. He's no stranger to big games. And if he pairs up with Trevor Lawrence and gets 130 plus targets like he almost did across from Keenan Allen, he could do it again and still be a top 15 receiver if Trevor Lawrence gets him the ball.
That's a Robert Tonyan-esque efficiency. And we're not going to talk about Robert Tonyan, but he's a free agent this year. I noticed that. He may go somewhere new. Just something to keep your eyes on. Even though Mike Williams could be good in Jacksonville, because some franchises can't have nice things, I unfortunately think he'd probably snap a tibia walking off the plane. Or just couldn't get it done. Like, come on, there's no way that this guy in a contract year finally shows up and the Jacksonville Jaguars hand him 3 bags of money that all say Mike Williams on it, and he just comes into camp like, okay, I'm ready to go win a Super Bowl now. Like, come on, man. But I do like the call, though. I do think it makes a lot of sense. And for my next receiver, I am going to offer a sacrificial lamb to the fantasy football gods. Because this is ugly. Everyone's been talking about Philadelphia needing a receiver. I have been praying every night before I go to bed. I say, dear fantasy football gods, please do not ruin the careers of Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, Christian Watson, Jahan Dotson. I can keep going, but you get the point. By making them a Philadelphia Eagle. And we're going to outline why I like guys going to the Eagles, but we're not going to do that today. But it's not rocket science, that's for sure. It's not a great landing spot any which way you twist it. However, if there was one guy who could benefit this offense, stay on the field, and be fantasy football relevant on a minimal target share, it is none other than Will Fuller. I think Will Fuller could be a really strong fit in Philadelphia as a deep threat who could open up things below for Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. He pretty much didn't play this past year in Miami. He was the PPR wide receiver 182 with 2 games played, 8 targets, 4 receptions, 26 yards. Coach, put me in. I can get past a short corner in a zone 2. Come on, man. Just put me in, coach. I'll do it for free. So Will Fuller should be very inexpensive next season. He has pretty much only been a great NFL receiver for an 8-game stretch on which he was on performance-enhancing drugs. So he's not going to be expensive.
let him play on those drugs, man, because that was lit. That was honestly lit.
Play on steroids.
Let Will Fuller roid up because he's top 10 when he does.
Hashtag let Will Fuller roid up. Hashtag let Will Fuller.
A whole lot of word vomit and alphabet soup on this episode for the listeners. Apologies.
Yeah,
on our behalves.
Yeah,
but
like
this is so ugly.
It's so ugly. However, it would spare all of these rookies from having their careers objectively ruined. Just off the bat, just over. Like any receiver drafted to the Eagles, in my eyes, is pretty much canceled. So we may as well throw Will Fuller in there and let him see what he can do. And I think he would actually get a chance to be on the field. He would get some signature deep balls. It makes sense on paper. It makes sense in the wallet. I don't think it's crazy. They need guys. Even if they take a rookie, they could still sign Will Fuller. They need guys there. Jalen Reagor is terrible.
Yeah. I mean, that was just a jab. You just threw that in to say it, but
I didn't need to say. I didn't need to say that. I'm sorry, Jalen. Jalen's a friend of the show. I shouldn't have said that.
Let's keep it moving because we're already 35, 36 minutes in. DJ Chark, I think he's going to be a Las Vegas Raider. I was entertaining Atlanta. I was entertaining Chicago. But it dawned on me, this Raiders receiver room has no speed. They are probably, if you had to, Zay Jones ran like a 4.58 where did he even go to?
He ran a 4.58. I don't know about that.
All right. All I know is that Zay Jones was a second round pick and his best season just came off the season where he had one touchdown. So Jones, Schmones, whatever. The point is, I think that the Raiders are really going to be looking to retool their offenses or their offense for the shorter term, whereas Atlanta and Chicago are likely going to be looking at more long-term options. I get that DJ Chark is only 25, but coming off of an injury, the shorter-term option for him is sooner rather than later. That injury was gruesome, so teams are going to be pretty turned off. But after losing Henry Ruggs, like I said before, this Raiders offense has no speed. Chark has a top 20 season under his belt. Chark can really take the top off of a defense and open up the underside for guys like Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, and Hunter Renfrow. I don't think he's going to be entirely fantasy relevant, but if he's the wide receiver 40 as a Las Vegas Raider, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I think this is honestly a really good fit and something that Josh McDaniels could definitely use alongside all those middle of the field possession guys that he has right now.
Interesting. If they have the cap space to make it work, it's totally on the table. I think I personally prefer some of those spots like Chicago or Atlanta in terms of likelihood. Because, and I know you already know where it's going. They seem to like Bryan Edwards just a little bit. It's pretty good. They also do have draft capital. So, but I hear what you're saying, though. I don't think it's crazy. It's definitely in line. It's definitely within the realm of possibilities. Holy alphabet soup. Jeez Louise. So those were our 5 receivers. We talked about Allen Robinson, Christian Kirk, Mike Will Fuller, and DJ Chark. Before we talk about 2 tight ends, and ironically, we have the same landing spot because it's the biggest no-brainer ever in the history of fantasy football. I just wanted to comment. We didn't talk about Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams, Antonio Brown. To be frank, we just didn't really. We'll be tweeting about him. We can have discussions with him. We can bring him up next week if you guys want. But we just found these guys to be the guys that we wanted to really focus in on this week.
I also do think that both of those receivers you listed are going to return to their respective teams, whether it be via the franchise tag or via contract negotiation.
It's looking that way. I lean to agree.
That way. We wanted to talk about guys who might be a little less likely to get the tag or a little bit more
Kirk,
likely to move. Like Christian Kirk. Exactly. So without further ado.
Should we just hit it at the same time? Should we hit a little drum roll?
Los Angeles Chargers tight end, insert name here, it's the cat's pajamas, the best thing since sliced bread. It's everything Hunter Henry could have been if he didn't go to the Patriots. And it's going to be somebody. And
it could be Trey McKinney, but we don't think so.
Yeah, we definitely don't.
But I'm pretty sure he got a touchdown this year. I think he got one.
He might have. I don't care.
I'm not taking him off my taxi squad. But anyhow, AJ, you think it's Mike Gesicki. I think it's Evan Engram. Care to outline why you think it would be Gesicki?
Yeah, I'll run through it quick. Gesicki is definitely more likely to receive the tag from Miami than Engram is from the New York Giants. But Mike Gesicki just came off a season where he was the TE9 on 112 targets for 73 yards, 780 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. On paper, those numbers sound not the best because he really did have a cold streak that sort of came in line with the emergence of Jalen Waddle in the second half, as well as Tua having some streaky performances. But Gesicki, if he joined the Chargers, oh my gosh, he would go nuclear. He would go atomic.
AJ, do you remember my rule for backtracking in fantasy football? What's my rule on backtrack? If you don't know, it's okay.
Something about its situations change, you're allowed to backtrack.
You backtrack hard and you backtrack fast. When you realize you are wrong or something has changed, because I was totally right about Mike Gesicki in Miami. If Mike Gesicki was a Los Angeles Charger, I would be – I don't even have a word. I don't have a crazy hypothetical. But you are right. This would be grotesque. I would want to see it on the field first before I go out and shell all my money for Mike Gesicki. But he would totally be an option to explode.
I mean, we're talking about the tight end that played more slots, a higher percentage of his snaps in the slot than any other tight end, and the only tight end in the NFL to have 1,000 or more air yards in the last 2 seasons each. So he's had over 1,000 air yards for back-to-back seasons. He's played over 50% of his snaps in the slot, so he's basically a glorified receiver. Mike Williams could depart. Receiving a quarterback like Herbert would just absolutely make him explode. Obviously, I think he would pass all of his marks of receptions, yards, and touchdowns. And I think he would fulfill that Hunter Henry role that they really missed last year immensely.
Totally agree. And I really think it's a great landing spot when I'm pitching Evan Engram. As a reminder, Evan Engram was the tight end 5 as a rookie. But like most players in Giants blue, has had his struggles these past couple of years, and rightfully so. And Evan Engram hasn't been great, mind you. Like, I'm not saying that he has been this guy who's a no-brainer, but Evan Engram is big, he's quick, and he's athletic. And he could be an interesting buy low, because just because the Chargers have a lot of money doesn't mean they're going to want to spend a lot of money. They can give Evan Engram $5 million and throw him out there and see how he looks, and he could still be an interesting part of this offense. And I'd argue with Justin Herbert, Evan Engram would enter that fantasy viable tier of guys who aren't a locked and loaded tight end guy. The tight end tier is looking bigger this year, which I'm super excited about. There's probably like 10 guys you could really take this year. In years past, it's been shorter. But Evan Engram would be somewhere in that tight end 11 to tight end like 16, 17 space. Like, you would take him in a best ball draft. You'd own him in a dynasty league, which I think would be an upgrade for him.
Yeah, it would definitely be an upgrade for him. And I do think that he would have a ton of upside. He's another guy that can play outside in the slot. That's kind of what he was drafted as. He was drafted as a guy who played slot receiver and happened to be able to play off the line of scrimmage as well. His best season as a rookie did come with Ben McAdoo there. And
which is why some people,
And obviously with Eli Manning playing his best football and Engram having his best quarterback play of his career during his rookie season. And like you were saying with Ben McAdoo, it's why a lot of people love Jacksonville as a landing spot for tight ends as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Sorry for cutting you off.
You're chilling. You're chilling.
But also, I hope that the Chargers don't sign either of these guys, because Trey McKitty is going to be something. Holding on, baby. So to round out the show, we're going to do a little lightning round. We're going to go quick. We're just going to run through not too much analysis, but just pointing out some facts for you guys, things that you should think of. Call them like food for thought, if you will, or for non-free agencies who could be impacted by free agents for thought. That's the segment right there. So we're just going to talk about some guys who are not going to be changing teams to our knowledge, but could be negatively affected by guys that are. So AJ, would you like to get us started with Jarvis Landry?
Yeah, Browns are going to be in the market for receiving weapons. Landry just put up career lows in yards, receptions, and touchdowns. Depending on the guy they bring in, it's either going to really help him because Baker Mayfield will throw better and defenses will be less keyed in on Landry, or if they completely revamp this offense entirely. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski is struggling to use Jarvis Landry. He might just be completely phased out. He might be bought out. He might be cut. I don't think he leaves them that much dead cap. he might be moved for scraps. So Jarvis Landry, I'm really keeping an eye on where he will potentially could end up and who he could be potentially playing alongside if he remains in Cleveland.
Great call. For me, I'm going to talk about Chris Carson. I don't really know what Rashad Penny is going to end up doing yet because I'm waiting for that. I think that's going to have a really tight correlation to Russell Wilson. And it's kind of like the weather outside. Like Russell probably stay, but we don't know that. And I feel very similarly, like if they keep Russ, they're going to want to keep the band together. Rashad Penny will be the lead guy. Like I was an honest to God breakout that we just saw. If they run this back, I'm going to be very optimistic about Rashad Penny. The question is they may not run this back. He may go somewhere else. Could be looking at a Houston. Could be looking at even a Miami for that matter. So that'll be interesting. But Chris Carson, it's very relevant what happens to Penny because if Penny comes back, Chris Carson in my eyes is nothing other than like a low-end handcuff. I'd honestly have him. And this may sound disrespectful, but he's been hurt. He hasn't been good when he's on the field. I'd kind of have him along like the Devontae Bookers of the world. Like
I'd rather have DJ Dallas as the handcuff.
That's what I'm saying.
Like Penny.
Now, if Chris Carson's gonna get like 250 ugly carries, sure, I'll have Chris Carson, but that wouldn't happen. Depending on Rashad Penny,
he would have to stay healthy for 250 carries.
Exactly.
Keeping it pushing Mecole Hardman. I think the Chiefs not only could, but absolutely should bring in a receiver. They offered a contract to Juju last year. There's no reason they won't do it again this year. They're being mocked to take a receiver at the back end of the first round as well. So it's definitely a possibility for them there. And even though Hardman showed flashes at the end of the year, his upside will be completely capped if they bring in a higher caliber receiver and not just a bunch of guys to sort of fill in around Tyreek Hill as they've been doing in years past.
100%. Javonte Williams, and this is a cold take. He's going to be ranked somewhere in between the running back 6 and the running back 24 next year. I know. It's shocking. But what's going to impact that range is whether Melvin Gordon stays or goes. To be honest, I'm probably not going to have a lot of Javonte Williams at either price, just because as good as he is, and he's really, really good. Like, he's a talented guy. And like this Denver offense should improve a ton. At the running back 6, he'll be really expensive for a 3-game stretch. And at the running back 24, he'll be splitting carries. The only way I'd be really in on Javonte is if like I got him a little below ADP because I'm a sucker for a sale. However, so if Melvin Gordon stays, not great for Javonte. If he leaves, wheels up.
Yeah, totally agree. Last guy I'm going to bring up, another receiver and a guy I've hated on in episodes past, Darnell Mooney. This is another receiver that benefited from not having a lot of target competition.
Except for Allen Robinson, but I guess
he's not much, all 66 of those. Not much of those targets really turned to much. But this is a team that could use receivers, and the Bears are actually in the running for a guy like Mike Williams as well. A lot of people are projecting that the Bears will pay him potentially, and if they don't, people are projecting that they'll take a receiver in the NFL draft. So whether it be through the draft or through free agency, I do think the best days of Darnell Mooney are behind him because of the scheming of this offense and who Justin Fields will likely be throwing to next year.
It's crazy how quickly a guy can turn from such a fantasy darling to overpriced, just like that. We were writing articles last year being like, you got to go get Darnell Mooney. And then now that he was good, we're all kind of like, oh, okay, that's enough Darnell Mooney. Exactly. It was fun. We were along for the ride. It's like Dogecoin. You buy in, you sell high. And this really isn't a player, but I just want to – it's not one specific player, but I would definitely keep my eyes on a lot of young NFL quarterbacks in the fantasy circle. I think you should take shots on guys like Tua, Trevor Lawrence. I know Herbert and Burrow are more established, but them as well, and Zach Wilson, all at their respective ADPs, because these 5 young quarterbacks, first off, have all shown something valid on the field. Even Zach Wilson. They've all done a good thing on the field. Some of them have led their team to Super Bowls. Some of them have had really high completion percentages and have been super boring like Tua. Some of them run around a lot like Zach Wilson and are afraid of gang signs. However, all 5 of these guys objectively have promise. And all 5 of these guys, all their teams are the leaders in NFL cap space. So I'm pretty optimistic that every single one of these guys' situations should get better before it gets worse. So if you're looking at Joe Burrow in the 5th or 6th round of a best ball draft, I don't hate it. If you're looking at Tua in round 14, I don't hate it. I think these guys' situations are going to get better before they get worse. And they may not be astronomical risers, but I think they could be slight risers in dynasty, redraft, best ball, what have you.
Yeah, and ADP values is the main thing.
Exactly. At wherever you can get them now, I think they could all go up a smidge. That's just me.
That's a good take. Some of the teams that we didn't really discuss for potential landing spots but have a ton of cap space, the Jets, Broncos, Commanders, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do you think any of those teams are a dark horse to take a flyer on maybe one of the guys we just discussed? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but
yeah, that's okay. I like to be on the spot. I think the Commanders could absolutely take maybe not the Commanders. I'm on the spot, so I'll take a second with this. I think, and you may not like this because I really like Michael Carter. The Jets could be a sneaky guy to bring a compliment if they wanted to use Carter in more of a passing role. That may not be necessary, but they could. I also think the Jets could also pay a receiver. If Christian Kirk left, I don't think he'd be a bad fit there alongside Elijah Moore and Corey Davis. Even Will Fuller, for that matter, would be a decent Jet. So sorry, man.
You didn't have to.
But I think that a lot of these teams could be in play for these guys. Absolutely.
Yeah. We obviously talked about the Jags pretty immensely. I think they could definitely be in the market for a tight end if they want to address receiver and running back.
Well, they're signing Zach Ertz. We know this already. This is like we know this. We don't know. This is not confirmed. It's not confirmed. This is just something we've discussed. Doug Marrone definitely thinks about it every night before bed. No question.
Yeah, I don't really think the Commanders are in the market for a skill position player, and that's not my Terry bias.
They can't afford one. Like,
at all.
Sincerely, they can barely afford to bring in a running back to complement Antonio Gibson. They certainly can't afford to go and get Mike Will to play alongside Terry and Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. That's pretty much gonna do it. Any parting words for our listeners?
No, dude, I'm starving. Let's get out of here.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. My name is AJ. As always, I'm joined by Ben. You better tune into us on Twitter at AJ the Pylon Don, at Ben the Pylon Don. We'll see who pointed to the right
killer
handles.
Point. That was great. So, it's an invert. Now I'm pointing.
Now you got it. So make sure to follow us on Twitter at those Twitter handles. Follow our main Twitter at Pylon Dons. Follow us on Instagram at The Pylon Dons. All of our socials will be in the conclusion of this video, so make sure you go check them out. The TikTok page is live. We promise we're getting that video up as soon as I get this fade done tomorrow.
I'm Ben White. Bye.